One mechanic that's central to the Super Mario Bros. Franchise is platforming. Having to run and jump through each stage, dodging any obstacles or enemies that might come in your way. At times, you have to traverse on specific types of things that either help or hinder your experience, which ironically are called platforms. Some of which act in some very odd ways and really add to your experience. Where in today's video, I want to look at the weirdest ones from each and every game in the series. Here I'm going to explain where you can find them, and why they stick out so much. But, oh yeah, before we get started, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. The first game to be released in the mainline series is Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1985, having one sort of platform thing that I consider weird in the jumping boards. In this first entry, the trampoline counts more in this category of being a platform as it's a stationary object that's used to reach higher up areas in a level. Usually to uncover some sort of secret item, but that's pretty much it. In Super Mario Bros. 2 Japan, also known as the Lost Levels of North America, there's a green version of this platform that instead launches you way up in the air off screen for a short period of time, where landing is really the hard part as it's hard to judge exactly where you're going to end up. When you add in the wind gust mechanics found in World 7-3 of that game, then things really begin to get hectic, needing to deal with two very crazy factors where dying happens more often than not. Up next is the NES version of Super Mario Bros. 2, released in North America in 1988. Having a few strange platforms that deserve to be talked about, starting off with the bone ones. These are actually quite morbid as they're just rib cages of dead creatures that you're able to stand on and move through most of the sand levels on top of. At times even using them to easily cross the sinking stuff, which helps you out a lot. I can't tell if this is supposed to be a carcass of a cobra or some other foe that you come across. So if you have any theories, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Another platform, at least according to the Mario Wiki, is the Magic Carpet. A thing at first occupied by a pigeon that you can ditch off and then use for yourself. This allows you to move way easier through the stage, albeit only for a short period of time. But in World 1-2, you can use it to skip almost the entirety of the inside of the stage if you use it alongside with the princess's float ability, which is extremely cool. Finally, another Mario Wiki certified platform that I always thought was weird is the Dream Machine. Found in the final boss area against Wart that spews out vegetables that you can use. Now, I never quite understood why Wart would choose a final arena with a machine that produces the things that could hurt him, but I guess that's besides the point. It's just a weird thing in a very weird out-of-place Mario game that doesn't make sense to me, so it's here. The final of the original NES trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 3 that came out in 1990. Again, having a few platforms that really stick out in this masterpiece, starting off with the rotary lifts. These are those spinning red and green lifts that can send you flying if you get caught up in them in the wrong way. Moving at varying speeds, so timing how long you can stand on them really decides whether you live or die. These are obviously placed in really annoying spots that make you second guess when it's safe to jump. But this difficulty always made things more fun for me, and that equals memorability. Another platform that's weird, but in my opinion is actually underused in this game, is the waterfall. A thing that you can actually swim upwards in to reach higher up, sometimes secretive areas. Again, this really only shows up as a thing in a few places. And not really until Super Mario Bros. Wonder would this mechanic make a return in any way at all, which is kind of disappointing. Last, I want to mention the white blocks that are weird as they're the ones that allow you to actually get behind the stage if you stay crouched on top of them for a period of time. In World 1-3, you can do this, and it will lead you to an extremely hidden warp whistle located behind the end goal. A secret that friends would tell other friends about and they wouldn't believe them back in the day, and a thing that still amazes new players. I do wish it was used more than just here and in a few other glitches, but it's still noteworthy nonetheless. The first handheld entry to come out was Super Mario Land for the Game Boy as one of its launch titles in 1989. Where if you know this game's secrets, then you know I'm definitely going to pick the elevator lift as its weirdest platform. These are hidden objects that can only be uncovered via bonk, producing an elevator that you can step on that takes you to the top of the screen to access certain secrets. These really only amount to a few coins and a couple power-ups, so it's not like it's a game-breaking shortcut, but I'm still glad Nintendo decided to add something like this in what's already a pretty rudimentary game. The next home console release would be Super Mario World that came out for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991. Having 3 very weird but very cool platforms I want to look at, with the first being the bouncing bows found in many vertical base levels. These really just act as springs that allow Mario to travel upwards very quickly, and with perfect timing you really can reach some high heights, needing to use them primarily in the gnarly Special World stage, which is tons of fun. The second is the escalator platform that's found throughout a few of the game's castles, acting sort of like a forced auto-scrolling section, throwing some tough hazards in your way as well. These always stuck out to me as such wacky things to try and work around, and I never really found them super easy to complete, always feeling odd to me and not something I got used to. The third and final one are the triple swing lifts, which are just the 3 platforms that are rotating over voids in certain levels, which are pretty simple at the end of the day, but I enjoyed the risky feeling of needing to use them. Now, I definitely left something from this title out, so if you think that I did for some reason, then please let me know in the comments below. Up next is the second handheld Mario game ever to be created in Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins for the Game Boy, containing a couple platforms I need to showcase, kicking things off with the spinning gears of the first level of the Mario Zone. These come in either the vertical or horizontal variety, where I just find it a bit off that you platform on 3D gears in a 2D environment, although I am impressed with how authentic the experience feels, especially for something made in 1992. The other I really think is odd are the beach balls, that you need to use to get through some sections of the second Mario Zone stage. At first being ridden on by some really angry looking bears that you could just knock off. You then just stand on the ball where it will allow you to cross the spike safely, as otherwise you normally just take damage from that hazard. Honestly though, these balls are pretty slow, and if you have the carrot power up, then they aren't really needed at all. The first game to be based within the 3D realm was Super Mario 64 for the N64. Having so many weird platforms that I want to show you guys that I just have to quickly list off each one and what exactly they do to your experience. These include the activated staircase that's triggered by a switch that only lasts for a short period of time, the arrow lifts that in this entry are super small blocks that are easy to fall off of, the Bowser puzzle of Lethal Lava Land, which is home to the 8 red coins, which is awesome to work around, the Bowser submarine, which only appears in Dire Dire Docks if you haven't completed the Bowser boss of that area yet, as for some reason if you have it disappears, it just doesn't make that much sense, the magic carpet that lets you travel through Rainbow Ride, as well as the Cloud House Castle that, according to the wiki, is a platform, so argue with them, not me. The drawbridges that I always found acted kind of abnormally. The sand pillars of the shifting sandlands that you can run up, which is a mechanic not really found anywhere else in this game. The tapering platforms that periodically get partially covered by lava and then return to normal. The giant wooden log found in some really crazy spots that needs to be rolled on correctly so you can proceed forward. The pyramid platforms that can be activated via switch and return to normal very quickly, so they're actually a pain to maneuver on. The pendulum swing that only sort of sucks because of this game's annoying camera. The merry-go-round that's full of creepy Boo ghosts found in the basement of the mansion of Big Boo's haunt. The gondolas of Cool Cool Mountain that, as a kid, I loved to take for some reason. And lastly, the giant hand of the tick-tock clock that changes speeds depending on what time it is when you enter the stage. Now again, that's just a few of them, there's probably more, so again, if I left anything out, let me know in the comments. Another game based within the 3D realm came out for the GameCube in 2002 called Super Mario Sunshine, where I want to talk about what I think is the most memorable platform in maybe any game I've played, that might be hyperbolic, but whatever, in the Muir ones of Gelato Beach. Back in the early 2000s, graphics like this were groundbreaking, and we really do take for granted how fast video games have progressed to what they are today. Yes, okay, the mirror effects aren't perfect, but at least looking back, it actually does hold up in the grand scheme of things, and looks great on the remastered Switch version of the game. Now, one platform I absolutely hate is the mud boat of Corona Mountain, where you have to use the flood to steer this thing through lava, which does not work as you'd think. Unfortunately, this is needed to complete the main story, so there's not like there's a workaround in using this. Where I probably lost the most lives in this game in this lake of lava, dying over and over trying to perfect this. I guess the same could be extended to the lily pad ride of the lily pad ride secret course, but again, that isn't necessary in completing the main story, so it's not like you're forced to do it. Lastly, I want to talk about another boat that I don't like, but this time not one that you control, and the ones found in the waters of Delfino Plaza. These move in set paths and are required to be used to complete a terrible puzzle where you need to guide Yoshi all the way over to a deserted island using these things, and eating fruit along the way so he doesn't disappear. This is awful, and sucks, and shouldn't be a part of the game as it just took way too long and wasn't even necessarily hard, it was just time consuming, where I'd lose my patience before I'd ever actually want to get to the secret. Nintendo would eventually return the series to its 2D roots with the release of New Super Mario Bros. For the dual screen system, where all the weird platforms from this one are all some sort of form of mushroom, beginning here with the trampoline ones. These do literally what you'd expect and allow Mario to bounce off and between them, letting you traverse through the stages in a fun way, even if at times they're located in some terror-inducing spots. Next is the moving mushroom that also does exactly what its name is, where you have to stand on top of them to collect coins in one specific subarea of World 1-5. There's also the one in World 3-2 near its end that's much larger and moves much more erratically to the point where falling off isn't just easy, it's expected. So hold on for dear life and maybe expect to have to try again. There's also the seesaw shrooms that when stood on, tilt under Mario's weight to whichever part of the platform you're on, needing to use this strange feeling mechanic to your advantage to get some things in a few situations. Similarly are the tilting shrooms, but instead of reacting to Mario's weight, they just move on their own and you have to deal with the timing of them to move on. These are pretty big, so you really shouldn't have a problem with them, but are usually located over a void, so there's at least some risk involved still. The last mushrooms are the rising and shrinking ones that do either one of those things depending on which one you're standing on, with the yellow ones forcing you downwards and the red ones taking you upwards. This works best in the auto-scrolling level of World 5-4. As the faster pace makes you think a bit more and makes you make really precise decisions if you want to get all of the collectibles. Next up is the space-based Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii. Having only two platforms that always stuck out to me as unique during my adventures, starting off with the robot turtle that you can ride in the Dreadnought Galaxy. This only happens at the end of the first mission after you fill the planet with water so you can reach the star. As before that, the turtle is seen stuck in the ground as it just seems like an inanimate object. When water does touch this weird creature, it springs to life, and you're able to ride on its back using it as sort of like a relief, allowing you to collect a few star bits, but unfortunately that's it. The other type of platform I feel like should be mentioned are the cosmic blocks. These are things that float in from far away off screen or in the distance, and complete the path in front of you so you can move forward through the stage. This sort of makes traversing between them kind of tough, but as long as you're patient and pretty deliberate with your movements, you shouldn't have any problems completing the areas that they show up in. The second installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series would come out for the Wii in 2009, having a bunch of platforms that all use the controller's motion controls in some sort of way, starting with the raft one of World 6-6. Now here you aren't technically controlling the platform itself, but instead the light that's attached to it, where when you activate the switch on the raft, it turns it on, it makes it move forward, as well as illuminating the light. Using that light allows you to find certain secrets that otherwise would be hidden from view either off screen or just in the darkness. So mastering how this works will allow you to 100% what's a pretty different feeling stage. Another platform that uses the system's motion controls are the remote control elevators that begin to rise once your character sets foot on them, where you're able to tilt them left or right, depending on which way you turn your Wiimote. This is primarily used to dodge attacks from whatever foes you might come across during your ascent, and unfortunately isn't used enough, only really being featured here in this mid-tower stage of World 7. Another that's somewhat similar but much smaller are the remote control platforms, that instead of moving vertically, move horizontally along a wire that they're linked to, using the motion controls to decide whether you want it to travel forwards or backwards. These are mainly found in World 8-5, and is necessary to use to get over a large lake of lava to the other side, meaning that this game forces you to use a singular Joy-Con to play through it, whether you like that or not, as of course that's the only way you can use the motion controls in this system. Ending things off in this entry are the remote control lists that don't exactly have you controlling the direction that they move, but instead when you're on them you can flick the remote and they'll move from one stationary position to another. These need to be used very carefully as they're always over voids, meaning one wrong move and you'll lose a life with nothing more that you can do. So just move slowly and always remember that they only move when you want them to. The second of the space-based sub-series, Super Mario Galaxy 2, came out for the Wii in 2010, having one really cool and super out-of-place platform that I want to look at, which is the teeter-totter moon of the Boo Moon Galaxy. This is just a sliver of a moon that you can tilt if you stand on one side of it, needing to manipulate the planet slash moon to collect all of the yellow star chips and create a launch star. Now, I get that sliver moons don't actually exist and in reality are just the shadows cast on the moon itself from the Earth and the Sun to give the effect, but I still like the idea of how this works in this game's environment. And I do respect Nintendo for going the more fantastical route instead of just sticking to reality, which at times can be just super boring. Nintendo would perfectly blend aspects of the franchise's 2D and 3D realms with the release of Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS, having a platform that was always a blast to work through in the bleep blocks, which appear and disappear depending on the beat of the music playing. Without the Super Leaf power-up, this type of challenge can be quite difficult, as the platforms that you have to use aren't exactly uniform in any way, and there are many things along their paths that want to try and damage you. Plus, of course, you're over a void, so you will die if you make one wrong misstep. Another platform I like, but is also kind of weird, is the Bone Coaster, a vehicle that you have to ride over lava in the second Bowser Castle of World 8, following a set path that has many fire-based hazards waiting for you. This isn't that special of a thing, but isn't something we see a lot of in the 3D environment, as historically this is a 2D Mario thing, something this game does well as it's able to incorporate aspects of both worlds. Next is another new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series entry, here being the third for the 3DS, although it's randomly given the moniker of being the second, but anyways, there's a couple of noteworthy platforms from that game that I want to mention, beginning here with the Ghost Coaster. These are platforms found in ghost houses that are being carried through the stage by a bunch of Peepas, needing to ride on top of them all while dodging the other ghosty foes that you come across. As you'd imagine, there's some sort of jumping puzzle involved in using them at times, so you need to learn what their advantages are and how super easy it can be to miss some secrets without them. Another from this title that I want to look at is the Sky Move Lift, which basically is just an airship that you ride through the entirety of World 5A on. There's really no risk in doing this, as you just have to stay on top of this ship in this bonus coin stage where you can gather tons of this stuff if you're skilled enough. Although, in this game, that really doesn't mean much as they're everywhere and are somewhat meaningless and are only really used to get the final title screens. The final installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series first came out on the Wii U, then would later be re-released in deluxe version on the Switch, having two platforms we're going to look at, starting with the bean one that's attached to the beanstalk of the Skyward Stalk stage. These periodically curl up into themselves, and if you're on it when this happens, they kick you off for a short period of time until they return to normal. However, each one does act differently from the next, so don't expect any uniformity. This stage is an auto-scroller, so things are made much more difficult because of that. And there are tons of voids to fall into, making pinpoint jumping actually key. The only other ones I want to showcase are the Stonehead statue platforms that remind me a lot of the statues that have been found on Easter Island. These either move back and forth or topple over when you interact with them, so you can't really take your time as you maneuver forward or else you'll just surely mess up. The next game to come out is Super Mario 3D World, that was also initially released on the Wii U, then was later re-released on the Switch, having two very weird platforms that are sort of linked together as they both use the Wii U gamepad, being the touchstones and propeller lifts. The touchstones uses the Wii U's touchpad as a way of activating them, which creates pathways for you to move upwards and move on through the stage. The propeller platforms have you blowing into the built-in microphone to move them through the stage, something I always found super awkward and kind of shoehorned into the game for no reason. Both of these really just come across as gimmicky to me, and I'm glad that in the Switch version, these mechanics were just left out and you just have to platform on them regularly. Now we move on to the absolutely massive Super Mario Odyssey entry for the Switch, where both my choices for weirdest platforms from it come from the Luncheon Kingdom, with the first being the rolling corn that you can find at the beginning of it near the ship. The puzzle here involves capturing a stack of Goombas and taking them across the corn, which acts like the wooden log from Super Mario 64 that we talked about earlier, using it to meet up with a Goombette and collect the star. I just really like the food theme of the stage, where there's several things like this scattered throughout the strange place, including what we're going to talk about next, the spitting saucepans. These very strange things have two sides to them, where one is just regular solid ground that normal Mario can stand on, and the other is liquid hot magma, where only if you capture the lava bubble can you traverse on/in it. These become somewhat useful in hiding balloons during the Luigi's Balloon World game mode, but otherwise are underutilized and somewhat useless. The last game we're going to look at in this video, and the final of the franchise to come out, is Super Mario Bros. Wonder for the Nintendo Switch. Having 3 platforms I think can safely fit within the category of being weird, with the initial we're going to look at being the Ikado lists that are only really found in the Sharp Trial launch to victory stage. These bamboo lists have holes in the sides that contain copycat enemies, where every time you jump they copy your movements and come out of their hiding spots. Being able to use them to your advantage to kill certain enemies and gain certain otherwise ungettable collectibles. Next up we have the cloud-like puffy lists that act sort of like accordions, compressing to a smaller size if there's any weight on them at all, or if they're left alone, they become normal and expand as much as they can depending on their size. I really do think though what makes them weird to me all has to do with the Wonder Flower effect part of the up and down puffy lift stage, where in this one you actually become one of these platforms and have to, well, platform through a small area with tons of spike balls that try to deflate you. If that doesn't sound off to you, then I really don't know. Lastly, I just want to mention one of my favorite platforms of the game, the pump lifts, where you need to continuously jump on these, again, accordion-like things to propel it forward in the section that it's in, going faster depending on how rough with it you are. This really is a standout during the final test badge marathon stage, having to use this lift in conjunction with the floating high jump badge to make it safely to the next parts. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to my channel. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!